$20,000. That number changes more than you think. Most people stop celebrating at 10,000. That's the wrong finish line. 8% return on $10,800 a year. Pocket change. 8% on $20,1600 every single year. Your money starts working a second job. You don't get a say in this. The median American savings account holds $8,000. You already beat them. You are doing 2.5 times better than the average American. Let that land. Banks made $9.9 billion from overdraft fees in 2022. 1 year. $9 billion. A $35 overdraft fee hits different when you're living paycheck to paycheck. At $20,000, overdraft fees are a non-event. The math flips completely. When you are poor, everything costs more as a percentage. That's not an opinion. Buying in bulk saves 20 to 30%. You need capital to access that. Cheap shoes that fall apart in 6 months cost more than quality ones. Always. Paying insurance monthly instead of annually? You're losing a discount every single year. Survival mode costs you money. Stability earns it back with interest. Delayed gratification is not a personality trait. It's a trained skill. Stanford's marshmallow test, 1970s, wait 15 minutes, get twice the reward. Kids who waited scored higher on SATs, fewer behavioral problems, better outcomes everywhere. YOLO stocks, job hopping, cashing out early, same pattern, same ending. Zero wealth. 20,000 shows you built discipline. That discipline compounds too. $1 million portfolio generates $20,000 every 90 days at 8%. 1 quarter, 3 months, 20 grand, no extra work. That's the system. The toxic job you're afraid to leave? 20,000 gives you the exit door. 2 to 3,000 a month in expenses. 20,000 buys 6 to 10 months. 10,000 locks you in. 20,000 sets you free. Same salary, different life. Maslow's hierarchy. 20,000 moves you past survival into safety. That shift is real. Saving $500 a month from zero reaches 20,000 in 35 months. Save $1,000 a month and you get there in 18 months. Side hustles matter. The second 20,000 takes only 26 months. The first batch is still working. Each dollar you save is fractionally more independent than you were before. Every single one. Your identity around money shapes your decisions. Change the identity first. Thinking I'm bad with money is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So is the opposite. Morgan Housel. Every dollar saved is a little more independence than before. Literally, from 4 figures to 5 figures. That psychological gap is bigger than the math. An emergency at 10,000 drops you to 4 figures. At 20,000, you stay safe. Abundance mindset is not wishful thinking. At 20,000, it's statistically justified. Roth IRA 2025 limit, $7,000. You can fully fund it and still have 13,000 left. At 10,000, funding a full Roth IRA means using 70% of everything you have. Index funds at Vanguard sometimes require $3,000 minimum to enter. You need the capital. The investor class is not a club you join. It's a threshold you cross. REITs, bonds, diversified ETFs, options that simply don't exist without capital behind them. At 500,000, you generate 20,000 every 6 months at 8%. Passively. You think wealth is about income. It's actually about the gap between income and spending. A friend spent $800 a month on Uber. He didn't know. That's the leak. You think you know where your money goes. In a few scenes, I'll prove you don't. But first, here's why the system is designed to drain you before you even start. 90% of you watching aren't subscribed. Hit subscribe and drop a thumbs up. It helps more than you think. Here's the mechanism. Your original 20,000 keeps compounding while you keep contributing. That is why the second 20,000 arrives in 26 months, not 35. The math is working for you now. Meet Alex and Jordan. Same salary, $55,000 a year. Their outcomes? Completely different. Alex spends every dollar he earns. Jordan saves 15% automatically every month. Same income. In 10 years, Jordan has over $160,000 invested at 8% returns. Alex is still at 0, debating his next purchase. Jordan is debating which ETF to rebalance. Your income is not your wealth. Your savings rate is. That reframe changes everything. Automate your savings on payday. Every month, before you see it, it's already invested. Compound interest is a boulder rolling downhill. Slow at first. Then, unstoppable. A 1% annual fee on $200,000 costs you over $170,000 in lost, compounding over 30 years. DOO tracks the S&P 500 at a 0.03% expense ratio. The fee advantage is enormous. Jordan puts her full $7,000 Roth IRA contribution into VOO every January 1st. Alex waits. VTI gives you every publicly traded U.S. company in one fund. Total market exposure, minimal cost. SCHD focuses on dividend growth. Consistent income, lower volatility, decades of compounding history. A properly diversified portfolio at $20,000 might be 7 in Roth, 8 in emergency fund, 5 in taxable brokerage. The emergency fund isn't lazy cash. It's insurance that lets your investments never get touched. Most people sell during a 15% dip. Investors with $20,000 see a buying opportunity instead. Set aside $1,000 to $3,000 as dry powder specifically to buy dips. That cash has a job. Friends who invested their full $1,000 lost their nerve when it dropped to $850. They sold with $20,000. A 15% dip costs you $3,000. You can absorb that and wait. The best investment account is not the one with the highest return. It's the one you actually fund. Track every expense for 30 days in a spreadsheet. Every dollar. No exceptions. You will be surprised. Most people find $200 to $500 a month in expenses they forgot existed. Forgotten subscriptions alone often total $60 to $120 a month. Cancel ruthlessly. A 5% raise on a $55,000 salary adds $2,750 a year. Invested? That's significant. Research salary benchmarks on BLS data before asking for a raise. Walk in with numbers, not feelings. Jordan asks for a raise after strong performance. Alex doesn't. 5 years later, Jordan earns $12,000 more annually. Side hustles are not about passion. They are about adding one extra savings contribution per month. Sell things you don't use. $100 to $500 one time often covers an extra month of investing. Every dollar matters more on the way to $20,000 than it does at any later stage. Diversification is not about owning more. It is about owning less of the wrong things. A 3-fund portfolio, U.S. stocks, international stocks, bonds, covers virtually every market scenario. Alex finally opens a brokerage account. He puts everything into a single meme stock. You know how this ends. You think the problem is not having enough money. It isn't. The real problem is what you do the moment you have it. In the next act, I'm going to show you the data that breaks this open completely. Here's the real data. Over 60% of 6-figure earners still live paycheck to paycheck. Income doesn't solve this. The S&P 500 has returned an average of 10% annually over the last 50 years. Data from Morningstar, at 8% average annual return, $20,000 becomes over $215,000 in 30 years. You think a 15% market dip is a disaster. Every long-term chart says it's a speed bump. Compound interest is not a math concept. It is a boulder rolling downhill. Slow at first, then unstoppable. The Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances shows median net worth at $69,000. With $20,000 at 25 and no additional contributions, you'd hit over $200,000 by 65. Add 500 monthly contributions on top of that, you're looking at over $1.5 million by 65. Jordan starts at 25, Alex starts at 35, same contributions. Jordan ends up with over double. That difference is 336 extra monthly contributions. Time is the variable you can't buy back. QQQ tracks the NASDAQ 100. Higher growth potential, higher volatility. Only suitable if your emergency fund is solid. At $20,000, you can afford to ride volatility. At $2,000, it can break you financially and emotionally. In 2022, banks collected $9.9 billion in overdraft fees. Some customers were hit over 30 times each. That's $1,050 in overdraft fees for one person in a single year. Structural poverty tax. Chase charges $12 a month service fee unless you maintain a $1,500 minimum balance. $12 a month is $144 a year. Invested at 8% over 20 years. Over $7,000. Pre-pandemic, banks collected $15.5 billion per year in overdraft fees. That's a deliberate system. Here's the reversal. The people who need the most financial help pay the highest fees to access money. Annual insurance payment versus monthly. The annual discount is typically 5 to 15%. That's real savings. Buying in bulk at warehouse stores saves 20 to 30% on groceries annually. You need $2,000 upfront. Jordan buys annual insurance, shops in bulk, and has zero overdraft fees. Alex pays all three. Every year. That $1,500 gap per year, invested at 8% for 30 years, becomes over $170,000. That is the real cost of not hitting $20,000, not just the fees. The compounded loss of the fees. Career freedom is the most underrated benefit. You need at least 6 months of runway to negotiate from strength. At $10,000 with $3,000 monthly expenses, you have 3 months. Not enough to find something better. At $20,000, 6 to 10 months of runway. Enough time to pivot your entire career trajectory. You think you need to quit before you can pivot. Actually, you need savings before you can quit. The order matters. Going back to school, getting a certification, launching a side business, all require time you only have with savings backing you. A better job at 10% higher income, sustained for 5 years, generates $55,000 in additional earnings to invest. The boulder is already rolling. What you do in the next act decides how big it gets. Stay with me. The actionable system is coming now. Step 1. Know your baseline. Net worth, monthly income, monthly spending. Write the actual numbers down today, not an estimate. Most people have never calculated their actual net worth. That single exercise changes how you make decisions. Step 2. Play good defense. Track every dollar for 30 days minimum. App or spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. Just do it. After 30 days of tracking, identify every recurring charge you didn't consciously choose this month. Cancel them immediately. Jordan tracks for 30 days and finds $412 in monthly leaks she forgot existed. Alex doesn't track. That $412 a month invested for 10 years at 8% becomes over $75,000. This is where it gets really interesting. The offensive strategy doubles what the defensive strategy saves you. Step 3. Play good offense. Ask for a raise if you haven't in over 12 months and your performance justifies it. A 10% raise on $55,000 is $5,500 more per year. Invested at 8% over 20 years, over $25,000 in additional wealth. The IRS Roth IRA limit for 2025 is $7,000 if you're under 50. Max it every year without exception. Tax-free growth inside a Roth IRA means every dollar of return is yours. No tax bill at 65. Jordan maxes her Roth IRA every year for 30 years. At 8%, it grows to over $860,000, all tax-free. Alex contributes sporadically to a taxable brokerage. Same returns before taxes. Dramatically worse outcome after taxes. But here's what nobody tells you. Your savings rate is more powerful than your investment return rate. Always. A 20% savings rate on $50,000 beats a 10% savings rate on $80,000. Run the numbers. The person in a 10-year-old paid-off car with a growing portfolio is wealthier than the BMW leaser with no savings. Full stop. Car payments average over $700 a month in the U.S., invested instead over 5 years, $50,000. The $20,000 breakdown that actually works. 7 Roth IRA, 8 emergency fund, 2 checking, 3 taxable brokerage. $8,000 in emergency fund covers 2 to 3 months of expenses for most people under 35. That's your floor. Most people think they're building wealth. They're building a lifestyle. The boulder rolls downhill either way. Yours just rolls backward. Lifestyle inflation is the silent killer. Every raise spent on a bigger car or apartment resets your compound clock. Invest your next raise before you ever see it. Automate the difference immediately on the day it hits your paycheck. Morningstar data confirms active fund managers underperform passive index funds over 15 years 87% of the time. Stop trying to beat the market, join it. VOO or VTI, automate monthly contributions, ignore daily noise. Jordan invests in VOO monthly with zero active management. Over 20 years, she outperforms most professional fund managers. Alex tries to pick the next winner. He's had 7 positions, 3 are down over 50%, 2 were sold at a loss. The IRS taxes short-term capital gains at your ordinary income rate. Hold for 1 year and the rate drops significantly. Holding for over 1 year at the 15% long-term capital gains rate versus 32% income tax saves thousands on every large gain. This is the system. Know your number, cut the leaks, raise your income, automate the gap, hold long-term. That's it. Jordan didn't earn more than Alex. She built a system. That's the only difference that ever mattered. The marshmallow test wasn't about marshmallows. It was about whether you could build a system to resist instant gratification. Susan Wojcicki, late CEO of YouTube, was in that study. Her mother said she showed greater self-restraint than any other pupil. Self-restraint in a psychology lab at age 5 predicted business success 40 years later. Delayed gratification is infrastructure. Every dollar that moves automatically to investments before you touch it is a vote for your future self over your present impulse. Rebalance your portfolio once a year. Not monthly, not daily, once a year. Less action, better outcome on average. Fidelity found that accounts with the best long-term returns belong to investors who forgot they had accounts. Inactivity wins. Jordan checks her portfolio 4 times a year. Alex checks it daily. Jordan's returns are higher. Alex's anxiety is too. Behavioral errors, panic selling, overtrading, chasing performance cost the average investor 1.5% annually per Morningstar. 1.5% annual drag over 20 years on a $200,000 portfolio is over $80,000 lost to fear. The system beats the emotion every time. Build the system, remove yourself from the daily equation, and let compounding work. At $500,000, your portfolio generates $3,500 a month at 8%. You could live on that. That milestone is reachable from $20,000 starting point with consistent monthly investing and time. Most people underestimate how achievable it is. Jordan hits $500,000 at age 47. She started with $20,000 at 25. Same starting point as Alex. Alex at 47 has $62,000. Same salary. 43 years of working. No system, no compounding. 2 people, same salary, same starting point. One built a system, one didn't. 22 years later, $438,000 difference. The boulder Jordan started rolling at 25 is now enormous. Alex's boulder never left the top of the hill. That's the only difference. The delayed gratification lesson isn't about suffering now. It's about designing your life so that future you has real choices. 20,000 is not the end. It is the beginning of a system that runs without you having to think about it constantly. Know your net worth. Track every dollar for 30 days. Ask for the raise. Automate the savings. Hold for decades. If you've hit 20,000 already, I'd love to know in the comments, did these shifts actually happen for you? Because the data says they should. Every week, I read the boring documents. SEC filings, Fed reports, IRS code, so you don't have to spend your weekend doing it. What's your current savings rate? Drop it in the comments. Doesn't matter where you are, just knowing the number moves you forward. $20,000. You thought it was a savings goal. It's actually a launch pad. Every week I decode one boring financial document so you don't have to. If this changed how you think, subscribe and leave a thumbs up.